Thank you for watching Ahmed Shakil 5858. I am Ahmed Goodman. Following are the news which have been reported by American, European, Canadian, African and Asian channels. News agencies, writers, AFP, AP have also reported the same news. Now the news headlines. Arizona, America abortion law of 1864 is now alive. Speaker Mike Johnson of U.S. Congress is in trouble. Remembering Rwanda genocide which occurred in 30 years ago. 200 chemical plants under scrutiny for environmental regulations in the United States. California can set its own emission limits. European court against Switzerland. Court fined railway company in US. Parents sentenced for children crime. Hamas, Israel, America, British Foreign Secretary. America show anger against Israel. Ukraine attack on Russia. Trump request rejected by court. On Wall Street, Dow Jones down, Nasdaq and S&P 500 up. Now the news in detail.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Palestinian media say airstrikes at 2 homes in Gaza City's Zaytun neighborhood earlier today, killing and injuring dozens of people. Other attacks were reported in other Gaza City neighborhoods, including Shujaiya and Sabra. This comes as negotiations in Egypt continue. Hamas says the latest ceasefire proposal does not meet its demands, but that it's continuing to review the plan, which includes a 6-week pause in fighting and the exchange of 40 Israeli hostages for at least 700 Palestinians imprisoned by Israel. While Hamas is demanding Israel end its assault on Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned on Monday that Israel has set a date to invade Rafah.
Today I received a report on the talks in Cairo. We are constantly working to achieve our goals. First and foremost, the release of all of our hostages and achieving a complete victory over Hamas. The victory requires entry into Rafah and the elimination of the terrorist battalions there. It will happen. There is a date.
Displaced Palestinians have been returning to Khan Yunis after Israel withdrew from the decimated southern city. One woman, Ayad al-Najjar, said normally she would be preparing for Eid celebrations at this time of year as she took in the ruins of her home.
Our house was good and had everything. I lacked nothing. I lived happily with my husband, and our daughter's children used to live with us too. There's no Eid for me. I have no desire to celebrate or do anything. I'll just sit in front of my house like this. We won't go anywhere, and many of our family members were martyred. They're still uncovering the bodies. Praise God. Who wants to celebrate? Every house has wounded or martyrs.
The UN Security Council will make a formal decision on Palestine's bid for full UN membership this month. Palestine initially submitted its application for UN admission in 2011. This is the Palestinian UN ambassador Riyad Mansour speaking Monday.
It was a historic moment then, and now that historic moment has been revived again, and we sincerely hope, after 12 years since we changed our status to an observer state, that the Security Council will elevate itself to implementing the global consensus on the two-state solution by admitting the state of Palestine for full membership.
But the U.S., one of 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, is expected to use its veto power. U.S. representatives say Palestine needs to negotiate statehood with Israel before it's granted statehood at the UN. Meanwhile, in The Hague, the International Court of Justice is holding its second day of hearings into Nicaragua's case against Germany. Germany's denied Nicaragua's charge that it violated the Genocide Convention by providing military and financial aid to Israel. Here in the U.S., Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren says she believes Israel's assault on Gaza meets the legal definition of genocide. Warren made the remark as she visited a mosque and was asked by constituents if she believed Israel was committing genocide. Warren said, quote, "If you want to do it as an application of law, I believe that they'll find that it is genocide, and they have ample evidence to do so," she said. Ireland's incoming Prime Minister, Simon Harris, immediate ceasefire, saying in a speech Sunday the famine in Gaza is a, quote, specter no Irish person can bear, referencing Ireland's historical famines, including the Great Famine of the mid-19th century. Harris, who's being sworn in by Ireland's parliament today, had a message for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Prime Minister Netanyahu, let me say this to you this evening. The Irish people could not be clearer. We are repulsed by your actions. Ceasefire now and let the aid flow safely.
Iran's foreign minister opened a new diplomatic site in the Syrian capital Damascus Monday, 1 week after Israel bombed the Iranian consulate, killing at least 7 Iranian officers. Hossein Amirabdollahian renewed Iran's vow to retaliate and accused the U.S. of giving Israel the green light for the attack.
I want to say from here in Damascus with a loud voice, America is responsible for this terrorist attack, and it must take responsibility.
Meanwhile, Iranian press is reporting Tehran told the Biden administration that it will refrain from attacking Israel if the U.S. can secure a ceasefire in Gaza. The report has not been confirmed by Tehran, and Biden administration has denied it. The University of Michigan's come under fire over its proposed disruptive activity policy, which was issued by the university president Santa Ono after Palestinian rights activists interrupted a speech he was giving. The ACLU of Michigan warns the policy will have a chilling effect and likely lead to violations of the First Amendment. Elsewhere, Vanderbilt University in Tennessee has expelled, suspended, and issued disciplinary probations to a group of students who engaged in a sit-in protest demanding Vanderbilt divest from companies complicit in Israel's occupation and killing of Palestinians. Special counsel Jack Smith is urging the Supreme Court to dismiss Donald Trump's bid for immunity in his federal election interference case, arguing presidents are subject to criminal law. Supreme Court justices are scheduled to hear arguments in the case April 25th. In other Trump news, the GOP frontrunner said Monday abortion rights should be decided by states. Trump has refrained from endorsing a national abortion ban, but has taken credit for the Supreme Court's overturning of Roe v. Wade, which has led to a cascade of abortion bans in Republican-run states, including Florida, where a 6-week ban is set to go into effect May 1st. The trial for 27 people charged in connection with the Panama Papers scandal began Monday in Panama City, 8 years after the massive data leak. In 2016, an international team of journalists published millions of documents exposing how the Panama-based Mossack Fonseca law firm set up a global network of shell companies for some of the wealthiest people in the world, heads of state and other elites, to hide money offshore, avoiding taxes and oversight. The leak prompted the resignation of Iceland's prime minister and implicated other world leaders, including former British Prime Minister David Cameron and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Those currently on trial include the founders of the now-defunct Mossack Fonseca law firm. The Panama Papers represent just a fraction of the trillions of dollars hidden away often illegally in offshore tax havens. About 100 people were killed, including children, after an overcrowded makeshift ferry sank off the northern coast of Mozambique. Some 20 others are missing. The group of 130 people had fled from Nampula on mainland Mozambique, reportedly after hearing news of a cholera outbreak. Mozambican authorities blamed their deaths on the spread of misinformation about the spread of the disease. President Biden announced new plans to cancel student debt for about 23 million people. Some of those to benefit include borrowers who now owe more than their original loan amount due to out-of-control interest, those who have had debts for over 20 years, borrowers who were enrolled in so-called low-value school programs, and those facing economic hardship. The new plan would completely erase student debt for around 4 million borrowers. Biden announced the debt relief in a speech in Madison, Wisconsin Monday as he made another pitch for re-election in a key swing state.
I also want to make, and I've been pushing this, and if I'm re-elected, I'm going to push it hard. I'm going to get it done next time, is I want to make community college tuition free. So you won't need loans at all. We'll cut half the cost of going to college.
In Strasbourg, France, the European Court of Human Rights handed out 1 victory and 2 defeats for the climate justice movement today as it ruled on 3 historic climate cases. The court ruled in favor of over 2,000 senior women from Switzerland who argued their rights were violated by governmental inaction on the climate crisis.
The court finds that there were some critical lacunae in the Swiss authorities' process of putting in place the relevant domestic regulatory framework. This included a failure to quantify, through a carbon budget or otherwise, national greenhouse gas emissions limitations. Furthermore, as recognised by the relevant authorities, the respondent state had previously failed to meet its past greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. By failing to act in good time and in an appropriate and consistent manner.
The Swiss women hailed their historic victory, but the celebration was tempered by the court's dismissal of similar cases by 6 youth activists in Portugal and a former French mayor, activist Greta Thunberg, who was at the courthouse for the verdicts, weighed in on those verdicts.
It's a betrayal beyond words, and today's rulings make very clear that European states have legal responsibility to take real-time action and to protect people, to protect its citizens. It cannot be a political choice whether to respect human rights or not.
And the Brazilian state issued a historic apology for the atrocities committed against indigenous peoples during its military dictatorship. The unprecedented move came as Brazil marked last week the 60th anniversary of the 1964 U.S.-backed coup that ushered in the military dictatorship which ruled for the next 2 decades. Brazil's National Truth Commission found 8,300 indigenous people were killed during the dictatorship. Others were thrown off their land, imprisoned in internment camps, and tortured. The apology came after the Guarani, Kaiowá, and the Krenak indigenous groups requested a collective apology from the Brazilian government's Amnesty Commission. During a ceremony last Tuesday, the commission's chairwoman, Nea de Stutz, kneeled in front of indigenous leaders to ask for their forgiveness. Here she addresses Janira Krenak.
I'm asking for forgiveness for the persecution that in the last 524 years, your people, as well as all the other original peoples, suffered due to the invasion that the non-indigenous people on this land that belongs to you. So you as leader, as the matriarch of the Krenak people, please bear our respect, our tributes, and our sincere apologies so that this never happens again.
Also last week on Friday, prominent journalist, author, and environmentalist Alton Krenak became the first indigenous member of the prestigious Brazilian Academy of Letters. Krenak vowed to use the seat to open
Good evening. We are learning more about what exactly the Prime Minister knew about foreign interference and the advice given to him. Justin Trudeau's inner circle testified at the public inquiry today. The gatekeepers during 2 previous elections did not recommend any action to counter Chinese meddling. CTV's Judy Trin reports.
Members of the Prime Minister's inner circle put on the hot seat. They were briefed by intelligence officials about Chinese meddling in the past 2 elections, but pushed back on the information.
I believe it's our responsibility in seeing it to ask as many questions as we can about it, at times challenge it.
The inquiry heard in September 2019. Justin Trudeau's top advisors were shown intelligence that China was interfering in the riding of Don Valley North. The Liberals' national campaign manager testified he briefed the Prime Minister, but didn't recommend any action.
And based on what I thought should be an extremely high bar for overturning a democratic result, I recommended to the Prime Minister that no action be taken.
To all my colleagues in the Parliament.
The inquiry also heard that after intelligence leaks suggested that Dong told a consulate official to delay the release of the 2 Michaels, Trudeau's team wanted to release other information to help clear the MP's name, but couldn't.
The conclusion was no, it cannot be made public. So we couldn't actually, in a clear way, defend Han Dong against this allegation, which was wrong.
Between June 2018 and December 2022, there have been 34 CSIS briefings revealing China clandestinely and deceptively interfered in both the 2019 and 2021 elections, and that cabinet, senior government, and top election officials were briefed. Critics say it's mind-boggling that the government put in place special mechanisms which found threats, but didn't issue warnings.
You didn't see any proof that this information was coming from China. Well, does he expect to see fingerprints?
The Prime Minister will testify tomorrow afternoon. He'll be asked questions about what he knew about Chinese interference and when, but more importantly, what he's done since then to protect Canada's democratic institutions. Heather. Judy, thanks. Switzerland violated human rights for its inadequate efforts to reduce global warming. The first time an international court has made such a decision on climate change. And as CTV's Annie Bergeron Oliver tells us, the implications could be far-reaching.
A European High Court delivering a surprise victory today to more than 2,000 Swiss women, all seniors, who fought for 9 years against their government's climate inaction.
La Cour nous a reconnus.
The court recognized our fundamental right to a healthy climate and to have our country take ambitious measures to protect our health and future. For the first time, the European Court of Human Rights ruled that Switzerland violated the rights of its citizens. Failures in its environmental policies, the court agreed, put the elderly at greater risk of dying from climate events like heat waves.
This included a failure to quantify, through a carbon budget or otherwise, national greenhouse gas emissions limitations.
The Swiss government says it will review the findings and identify new measures to strengthen its climate plan. Activists say that's not enough.
The emissions are still on the rise, and we are still moving in the wrong direction.
Today's judgment does not come with any sanctions and cannot be appealed, but it does set a legal precedent for the 46 member nations who belong to the court.
It affirms that the European Convention on Human Rights applies to the climate crisis. The governments have legal duty to act, and they've upheld the right of people to go to court and challenge their government's weak climate action.
Environmentalists stress the landmark ruling opens up a new chapter in climate litigation around the world and in Canada, where similar cases are making their way through the legal system.
The government is actually grappling with some of these types of issues in court already, and I think it emphasizes the importance of being ambitious and actually having a scientific basis for the types of reductions we need to make, actually putting in place measures to achieve those.
It wasn't all good news. The same court struck down 2 similar cases on what experts call technicalities. One involved a group of Portuguese youth. The other was a former French mayor who claims government policy, Heather, is putting his small French town at risk.
All right, Annie, thank you.
All right, now, according to some reports, my next guest is now, ABC among them, the frontrunner to become Donald Trump's running mate. Here to respond to that, more South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. Senator, I'm sure you heard about it. I'm sure you read about it. Want to get your thoughts about it.
Well, Sean, there's no doubt that we need 4 more years of Donald Trump, and I will do everything in my power to make sure we get 4 more years of Donald Trump. It is the best outcome for all of America. Listening to your brilliant monologue reminds me of election engineering. Whether it's the DNC, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, and CBS, they have become an extension of the liberal elite who are trying to have election engineering. They're trying to engineer an outcome. Listen, Sean, they have lost their minds because they're losing their voters. Bottom line is that we have to coalesce around Donald Trump so that we get 4 more years of low inflation, 4 more years of low unemployment, and frankly, a return to a fair and equal America. Everybody deserves a chance to succeed, but you got to work for it. And unfortunately, the liberal left, they are losing their minds because they're losing their voters. And thank God Almighty that Donald Trump has the backbone and the tenacity to stand in the fire, because if it's not him, it will be me and it will be you.
You know, we recently lost Joe Lieberman. I was friends with Joe Lieberman. I like Joe Lieberman. He was sort of like the canary in the coal mine. He was the vice presidential candidate for Democrats in 2000. Then the party threw him overboard, and he had to run as an independent to win back his seat in Connecticut, which he did so successfully. And what does it say about the Democratic Party today that they're so radicalized that either Joe Biden betrays Israel, as they were attacked, they were victims of terror, like we were victims of terror on 9/11/01. This is the worst terror attack in their history. Hamas started this. It was unprovoked. Israel rightly is trying to win their war on terror. Joe Biden is putting a knife in their back, trying to influence their elections.
Absolutely.
And he's put his own personal political ambition above fighting terrorists because of the pressure from within his party. What does that say about the party of Lieberman or the party of Scoop Jackson, if you want to go back even further? What has happened to this party that has become that radicalized that they're taking the side of radical terrorists over the right of a country to win a war against terrorists?
It's just disgusting. Senator Lieberman would be rolling over in his grave. Think about the fact that this administration told Israel on October the 7th, the day of the attacks, to stand down. Think about the fact that it's this administration that approved, green-lighted billions of dollars, $10 billion in November, $6 billion in August, green-lighting more money to actually fund Iranian proxies that are killing and targeting Americans. It's this administration that has allowed daylight between the United States of America and our greatest ally in the Middle East, Israel. I can't think of a greater dereliction of duty, save Afghanistan, when we lost 13 American soldiers, than what we're watching right now on display for every American to see. 90% of Americans actually agree with standing shoulder to shoulder with our ally Israel. We all know Psalms 122:6, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and those who do will prosper. This administration has lost its mind. This administration continues to prove that we are not loyal to our allies, and therefore we cannot be lethal to our adversaries. Hamas continues to grow because this administration put so many handcuffs on Netanyahu and Israel that the war continues to drag on. Give them the resources, the weaponry to finish this fight as quickly as possible, and that's how you save lives. You don't save lives by turning your back on your greatest ally in the Middle East.
All right, let me ask you this. Based on tonight's report, have you had any conversation with President Trump about potentially being and running as his vice president? And if you were asked, what would you say?
There's no doubt that President Trump will make that decision, I believe, before the convention. I have not had any specific conversation with the president. I can tell you one thing, whatever it takes for President Donald Trump to have 4 more years, whatever it takes to restore sanity in the streets of America, count me in, Sean. You're a patriot, I'm a patriot, I love America. I'm not possible in any other country on the planet except for the city on the hill. That's America.
All right, the shining city.
Tonight, breaking news as we come on the air, the tornado threat right now and the severe storm threat worsens over the next 24 hours, several states. And tonight, the Arizona Supreme Court upholding that state's 160-year-old abortion ban, one of the strictest bans in the nation. The reaction coming in at this hour, the justices in Arizona upholding that law from 1864. The law made before Arizona was even a state, before women had the right to vote. Tonight, Arizona is a key battleground, as you know, this November in the presidential race. So what does it mean in the race for president? Also tonight, for the first time, the mother and father of a school shooter sentenced to up to 15 years in prison each for their son's deadly school shooting. The apology from the father in court, but what the families of the victims then told both of those parents in the courtroom. The severe storm threat moving across several states tonight, tornado watches, the flooding threat, damaging winds gusting up to 75 miles per hour. The system then making its way toward the east coast and right up into the northeast. Rob Marciano timing it out. Federal agents tonight preventing what they say was a planned terror attack on multiple churches. The FBI arresting an 18-year-old suspect tonight, what authorities say he was planning. Pierre Thomas with late reporting. The horrific video tonight, the newly released police body camera video, deadly police shooting in Chicago. Graphic images showing a driver pulled over for a seatbelt violation, opening fire, wounding an officer, police firing back. 96 shots in 41 seconds. Tonight, Donald Trump's last-minute appeal to delay his criminal trial in New York that starts on Monday, denied tonight by an appeals court judge. So what does this mean? Will the hush money trial begin on Monday? The fires raging outside New York City tonight. The images coming in right now. These fires are near Newark Airport, and what authorities are now saying, a helicopter crashing into the water in Rhode Island, the urgent rescue effort before the chopper went down. Does Walmart owe you money? Authorities say time is running out for those who are eligible. And so many of you sent us messages after watching the solar eclipse right along with us. Tonight, with help from you, the most stunning images before we wait another 20 years.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to be back from our coverage of the solar eclipse, and we really appreciate you joining us for our special coverage. But we do begin tonight here with several developing headlines. This threat of severe storms, tornadoes, flooding across several states. It gets much worse over the next 24 hours, eventually right up into the northeast. But we begin with the shockwaves in Arizona tonight after that state's Supreme Court has now upheld an abortion law dating back to 1864, criminalizing all abortions except those to save the mother's life. In their decision, the Arizona justices referred repeatedly to the U.S. Supreme Court ruling overturning Roe v. Wade. Their decision on hold for 14 days pending a lower court review. Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs, a Democrat, saying the ruling creates more chaos for women and doctors in her state. A doctor who performs an abortion could get up to 5 years in prison. She says voters will have their say in November. Arizona, of course, is a key battleground in the race for president this November, and the question already, how could this decision now affect the presidential race? ABC's Rachel Scott leading us off tonight.
Tonight, Arizona's highest court upholding a 160-year-old abortion ban, one of the strictest in the country. A law written in 1864, before Arizona was even a state, and before women had the right to vote. It outlaws nearly all abortions, the only exception to protect the life of the mother. Tonight, outrage from Arizona's Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs.
And the near-total Civil War-era ban that continues to hang over our heads only serves to create more chaos for women and doctors in our state.
Under the law, doctors who perform abortions could face up to 5 years in prison. Frustration from Arizona lawmaker Eva Birch, who recently had an abortion after her pregnancy failed.
A couple weeks ago, I had an abortion. A safe, legal abortion here in Arizona for a pregnancy that I very much wanted. Somebody took care of me. Somebody gave me a procedure so that I wouldn't have to experience another miscarriage, the pain, the mess, the discomfort. And now we're talking about whether or not we should put that doctor in jail.
In today's ruling, the Arizona court referring 22 times to the U.S. Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe v. Wade. Donald Trump has boasted of appointing 3 of the 6 justices who overturned Roe. Yesterday, he said states should make their own laws when it comes to abortion.
The states will determine by vote or legislation or perhaps both, and whatever they decide must be the law of the land, in this case, the law of the state.
President Biden says that means that Trump supports state bans like the one in Arizona, which Biden today called extreme, dangerous, and cruel. Biden and Trump both know that abortion rights has won in all 6 states where it has been on the ballot, including in conservative states like Kansas, Kentucky, and Ohio. This November, voters could decide in 14 states. One of them is Arizona, a key presidential battleground. Tonight, the governor with this message.
To the people across Arizona who are concerned about the future of abortion rights in our state, you can make your concerns known at the ballot box, and I encourage you to do so.
So this is really shaping up to be an issue that could affect the presidential race in November. Rachel Scott back with us tonight covering the race for president. And of course, not just in Arizona, but how many presidential battlegrounds, these are the key states in the Electoral College that help decide the presidential race, will have voters not only deciding in the race for president, but weighing in on the issue of abortion rights.
David, we could see this issue on the ballot in several battleground states, including Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Nevada. We know that voters in Florida will have the final say on this issue, and that does raise real questions about whether it puts a state like Florida in play for Democrats. We know President Biden's campaign is counting on this issue to drive voters to the polls this November.
Civilians in Gaza are suffering, and at the same time, you can also...
Arizona who are concerned about the future of abortion rights in our state, you can make your concerns known at the ballot box, and I encourage you to do so.
So this is really shaping up to be an issue that could affect the presidential race in November. Rachel Scott back with us tonight covering the race for president. And of course, not just in Arizona, but how many presidential battlegrounds, these are the key states in the Electoral College that help decide the presidential race, will have voters not only deciding in the race for president, but weighing in on the issue of abortion rights.
David, we could see this issue on the ballot in several battleground states, including Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Nevada. We know that voters in Florida will have the final say on this issue, and that does raise real questions about whether it puts a state like Florida in play for Democrats. We know President Biden's campaign is counting on this issue to drive voters to the polls this November. As for Arizona, the justice is putting that ruling on hold for 14 days as a lower court reviews it. David.
Rachel Scott leading us off from Washington. Rachel, thank you. We turn now to Michigan, where James and Jennifer Crumbley, the first parents ever to be convicted in a child's school mass shooting, tonight now sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison each. The Michigan couple together for the first time since their arrest after their son's deadly rampage, their son using a gun they bought him as a gift. The father apologizing in court today, but then the families of the 4 teens who died with their own words for each of those parents. ABC's Trevor Ault from Michigan tonight.
Tonight, the historic sentence for James and Jennifer Crumbley, a Michigan judge sending the parents to prison for 10 to 15 years, the maximum sentence for failing to prevent their son's mass shooting.
These convictions are not about poor parenting. These convictions confirm repeated acts or lack of acts that could have halted an oncoming runaway train.
Despite the warning signs, the Crumbleys bought their son the gun, declining to take him home from school when called in about his disturbing drawings the morning of the massacre. The couple today, together for the first time since their arrest, making an appeal for leniency.
Please know that I am truly very sorry. I am sorry for your loss as a result of what my son did.
This would be any parent. Here are my shoes. Even to be your child.
The families of the 4 children killed rejecting that argument.
It wasn't possible for Hannah to outrun the bullets bought by you, Jennifer Crumbley, which were fired by the 9mm SIG-Sauer that you, James, gifted to your son.
Saying Hannah St. Juliana, Justin Schilling, Tate Meir, and Madison Baldwin would all still be alive had the Crumbleys done their job as parents.
When you texted, Ethan, don't do it. I was texting Madison, I love you, please call Mom.
The prosecution blasting the Crumbleys' chilling lack of accountability.
They do nothing, and then they come here today, and they claim they're victims.
The judge saying she decided to sentence the Crumbleys beyond the suggested state guidelines because of the catastrophic impact of their crimes.
Each of the defendants' gross negligence has caused unimaginable suffering to hundreds of others as a result of what happened that day.
David, these trials were watched very closely. They are certainly precedent-setting. The first parents held criminally responsible for their child's school shooting. And tonight the prosecution says James and Jennifer Crumbley have been held to the highest level of accountability under the law in Michigan.
David, Trevor Ault, who has covered this case from the start for us. Trevor, thank you. We turn now to the threat of severe storms tonight, moving across several states in the south, before it then moves east and then right up into the northeast. Tonight, millions are on alert for a multi-day outbreak. Tornado watches in Texas and Louisiana right now. Tomorrow, this threat widens to several states. The threat of strong tornadoes and damaging winds up to 75 miles an hour across to the Florida Panhandle. Rain and potentially damaging winds, then barreling right up the east coast. Senior meteorologist Rob Marciano is tracking it all for us. He's live in New Orleans tonight for us. Hey, Rob.
Hey, David, damaging winds, hail, and floods. I think the main threats tonight, we already had an 86-mile-an-hour wind gust in Texas, and we've got watches up from Texas all the way into Georgia. Look at Shreveport. You got clobbered earlier. Bossier City, you're next. And then down across Austin, I think storms will reform there. Tomorrow, there's red on the map, tornadoes possible. Baton Rouge across southern Mississippi. And these storms get going early. This is dynamics and dew point driven. So I think a cluster of damaging storms, including tornadoes, will be right near New Orleans before noontime and then crossing into the Panhandle of Florida and into Georgia late in the day. The low itself climbs up through the Mississippi and Ohio River valleys. It expands as it does so tomorrow night into Thursday. Rain and wind in the northeast, but the next 36 hours here in the south will be dangerous. David?
A switch from the solar eclipse indeed. Rob, thank you for the coverage yesterday, and thank you for tonight. We continue with the news here. And tonight, federal agents say they have prevented what they say was a planned terror attack on multiple churches in Idaho. The FBI arresting an 18-year-old suspect. His alleged plans now revealed tonight. Here's our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas now.
Tonight, this teenager is behind bars, accused of hatching a murderous terror plot to attack multiple churches in the lakeside community of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, all in the name of ISIS. Federal agents arresting 18-year-old Alexander Mercurio on Saturday, just hours before they say he intended to attack his father, handcuff him, and steal his dad's guns to target parishioners. Sources telling ABC News, Mercurio's father had dozens of weapons, including an AR-15 assault rifle, locked in a closet. In charges unsealed overnight, more chilling details. The teen allegedly telling one FBI informant, "I will start a few fires," and chuck the gas can at the fires to cause explosions and structural damage. Then I flee the scene and repeat until I am martyred. Authorities say Mercurio had identified a specific church where he would start his rampage on Sunday, right before the end of Ramadan. According to the FBI, in addition to setting fires using butane fuel, Mercurio also planned to attack parishioners with knives. A plot eerily similar to that recent ISIS attack on a concert hall in Moscow. Mercurio allegedly taking this picture in front of an ISIS flag, armed with a knife. On Saturday, the day before the alleged attack, Mercurio allegedly sent an audio file to an FBI informant, saying in part, "I am answering the call from the Islamic State for jihad and to kill." The news coming just days after the FBI and Homeland Security officials warned that ISIS was calling on operatives and so-called lone wolves to conduct attacks in the U.S. like the Moscow massacre.
The foreign terrorist threat and the potential for a coordinated attack here in the homeland, like the ISIS-K attack we saw at the Russia concert hall just a couple weeks ago, is now increasingly concerning.
The FBI director and attorney general making rare overnight statements. Chris Wray called the alleged Idaho plot truly horrific. The FBI was already worried about the potential of terror because of the Israeli-Hamas war. Now with ISIS showing signs of resurgence, authorities are even more concerned, David.
It will remain on alert for sure here in the U.S., Pierre. Thank you. We turn now to the horrific images tonight. The newly released police body camera video of a deadly police shooting in Chicago. Graphic images showing a driver pulled over for a seatbelt violation, opening fire and wounding an officer. Police firing back, unleashing 96 shots in 41 seconds. We have a warning here. This is difficult. Here's Alex Perez.
Tonight, an independent investigation underway after this traffic stop turned deadly. Chicago police body camera video capturing the incident that ended with officers firing a barrage of bullets, killing 26-year-old Dexter Reed. Police say Reed fired first. The ordeal unfolding just after 6 p.m. March 21st. Reed in the driver's seat of his white SUV, surrounded by 5 plainclothes tactical officers, guns drawn, who initially pulled him over for not wearing a seatbelt, and can be heard yelling commands at Reed.
Unlock the doors now!
In the video, Reed appears to ignore those commands.
Open the door now!
That's when Reed, investigators say, fired at officers, striking this officer, according to authorities, in the wrist. The officers scatter and immediately return fire, 4 officers unloading 96 rounds in 41 seconds. During the gunfire, Reed exits the vehicle and falls to the ground and appears to be shot multiple times. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson today.
Shooting a police officer can never be condoned. And we also have to be very clear that we hold our police to the highest of standards.
Reed, at the time of the incident, was facing charges for allegedly carrying a gun into a street festival. His mother, heartbroken.
I killed him! I killed him! I killed him!
And David, authorities say a gun was recovered from the front seat of Reed's vehicle. Those officers are now on administrative leave as that independent investigation is conducted. David?
Alex Perez reporting from Chicago tonight. Thank you, Alex. In New York City tonight, Donald Trump's last-minute appeal to delay his first criminal trial that is set to start on Monday has been denied tonight by an appeals court judge. So what does this mean? Does the hush money trial now begin next Monday? And what will it look like? Here's our senior investigative correspondent, Aaron Petersky.
Tonight, a New York appeals court judge rejecting Donald Trump's last-ditch efforts to delay his first criminal trial, now set to start in just 6 days. Trump asked for the case involving a hush money payment to porn star Stormy Daniels to be moved out of Manhattan, arguing he can't get a fair shake here because of pre-trial publicity. The prosecutors say Trump's the one who turns every court appearance into a spectacle. Trump also asking to halt the trial, saying the limited gag order leaves him unable to respond to what he called ongoing verbal assaults from Daniels and Michael Cohen, 2 key witnesses for the prosecution. But today, an appellate judge ruling the trial must go on. So jury selection is set to begin Monday. Prospective jurors will fill out a 7-page questionnaire asking whether they've ever attended a Trump rally, follow him on social media, or belong to an array of extremist groups like Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, or Antifa. Potential jurors will also be asked if they have strong opinions about Trump or firmly held beliefs about whether a former president can be charged with a crime. Trump has tried every which way to delay this historic first criminal trial of a former American president, and he still has a couple of appeals pending. But David, as of now, jury selection is starting on Monday, and the judge expects Trump to be there. David?
You'll be there as well. Aaron Petersky tonight. Aaron, thank you. This evening, Norfolk Southern Railroad has agreed to a $600 million settlement in the fiery derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. The agreement aims to settle all class action claims within a 20-mile radius of the spot where 150 cars derailed, spilling hazardous materials that caught fire. It would also settle any personal injury and health claims within a 10-mile radius. A judge could approve this within weeks. When we come back here tonight, the images coming in at this hour, the fires burning outside New York City, right near Newark Airport. We'll show you the images. Also, a helicopter crashing into the water in Rhode Island, the rescue effort. And this question tonight, does Walmart owe you money? In a moment. Tonight, the images coming in at this hour, several wildfires burning right outside New York City. The brush fires in Elizabeth, New Jersey, right along the turnpike near Newark Airport. Authorities say the smoke and flames so far are not affecting airlines taking off. They warn it could, though, slow down traffic. Tonight, an urgent rescue effort after a helicopter crashed in South Kingstown, Rhode Island. 2 people on board, the chopper sinking in Warden's Pond. The pilot and passenger climbing out, treading water. 2 people then in a boat racing over and able to pull them to safety. When we come back here tonight, Walmart may owe customers money, but time is running out to claim it. To the index, and tonight, Walmart may still owe millions of customers money. As part of a $45 million class action settlement, the company has to repay shoppers who were overcharged in recent years for bags of citrus fruit or packages of meat. Customers who kept receipts could receive up to $500. Even without a receipt, you may still get some money back. The deadline to file a claim online is June 5th. Walmart has denied any wrongdoing. When we come back here tonight, the solar eclipse across America. So many of you coming up to us in Burlington, Vermont, and to our teams across the country yesterday. So tonight here, with your help, the top 5 moments of the eclipse.
ABC World News Tonight with David Muir, sponsored by Pacific Life, creating financial security for more than 150 years.
Before we go tonight, so many of you left me messages on Instagram. So many of you came up to us in Burlington, up to all of our teams across the country. We experienced this all together, the solar eclipse. So tonight, 5 of the top moments. The eclipse crossing into the U.S. from Mexico, Del Rio, Texas here. The clouds parting, revealing that last sliver of sun. And then the corona. The eclipse creating that diamond ring effect. 40,000 people at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway awestruck when they saw this. Then the so-called Bailey's beads and their bright blue light radiating in Cleveland after that explosion of light. In Burlington, Vermont, where Lindsay and I were, the sunlight swelling behind the moon, creating then that diamond ring of hues, pink and purple. Wow, we were just, look at it, awestruck. And then this, Holton, Maine, the moon casting its shadow on the last stop of the last total eclipse over the U.S. for another 20 years. So we'll see you back here in 20 years, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow night. I'm David Muir. Good night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.
You have failed your son, and you have failed us all.
You blame everyone but themselves. The blood of our children is on your hands too.
A landmark sentencing.
Not only did your son kill my daughter, but you both did as well.
Tonight, a judge sentences the parents of a school gunman for up to 15 years in prison, as they're the first to be convicted for their child's mass shooting.
Each act or inaction created a ripple effect.
The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for being with us. We're going to get to that emotional scene in the courtroom in just a moment. Families coming face to face with the parents convicted of involuntary manslaughter for the role in their son's mass shooting. But we do want to begin tonight with a major abortion ruling that once again is putting the issue at the forefront of the 2024 presidential campaign. Arizona's Supreme Court today ruled that a 160-year-old near-total abortion ban is still enforceable. The law dates back to 1864, on the books since before Arizona was a state and before women had the right to vote. Arizona will be the 18th state to severely restrict or outright ban the procedure since Roe v. Wade was overturned in 2022. The decision comes the day after former President Donald Trump claimed he doesn't support a federal ban. But today, President Biden said Trump is directly to blame for the ruling, calling the decision extreme and dangerous. CBS's Nancy Cordes reports now on the fallout.
It is a dark day in Arizona.
Arizona's Democratic governor begged the legislature to step in today after the state's conservative Supreme Court reinstated a Civil War-era abortion ban with no exceptions for rape or incest. The author of the 4-2 decision wrote, "Physicians are now on notice that all abortions, except those necessary to save a woman's life, are illegal, with doctors facing a 2 to 5 year mandatory prison sentence."
We are 14 days away from this extreme ban coming back to life. It must be repealed immediately.
The decision does away with the state's current 15-week ban, which anti-abortion rights activists had challenged in court.
It's always the best decision to protect life as much as possible.
Arizona is now poised to join 17 other states that have imposed near-total abortion bans since Roe v. Wade was struck down. But unlike many of those states, Arizona is a pivotal swing state that went for President Biden in 2020. The state's Democratic AG announced today, "As long as I am Attorney General, no woman or doctor will be prosecuted under this draconian law."
Does that give doctors the certainty they need to keep performing abortions if they feel they need to?
Well, I think that medical providers are going to have to weigh their options and their risk with their own legal counsel, quite frankly.
Chris Love helps lead Arizona for Abortion Access, a group that has already gathered 500,000 signatures for a November state ballot measure that would establish a constitutional right to an abortion.
We have told Arizona voters what's at stake. I think today is a clear example that we were being serious about that, right?
The Biden campaign is counting on that ballot measure and others like it to help drive Democrats to the polls in November. The issue is a proven motivator, which could help explain why several top Republicans in Arizona came out against the Supreme Court ruling today, saying, Nora, that it goes too far and is out of step with the state.
Republicans will be announcing it. Nancy Cordes, thank you. Well, now to that other groundbreaking court case, the sentencing of James and Jennifer Crumbley, the first parents in the U.S. to be held criminally responsible for their child's school shooting. A Michigan judge today sentenced each parent to 10 to 15 years in prison in connection with the shooting deaths of 4 students at Oxford High School in 2021. CBS's Andres Gutierrez was inside the courtroom.
The blood of our children is on your hands too.
One by one, family members of the 4 students killed at Oxford High School addressed James and Jennifer Crumbley just before they were sentenced.
You have failed your son and you have failed us all. And while you were running away from your son and your responsibilities, I was forced to do the worst possible thing a parent could do. I was forced to say goodbye to my medicine.
The Crumbleys were found guilty of involuntary manslaughter earlier this year. Separate juries found they willfully failed to prevent their son Ethan from bringing a handgun to his Michigan school in 2021 and opening fire. Today, they each asked for leniency and forgiveness.
I am sorry for your loss as a result of what my son did.
We were good parents.
But the judge sentenced them to a minimum of 10 years in prison minus time already served.
These convictions confirm repeated acts or lack of acts that could have halted an oncoming runaway train.
During their trials, prosecutors painted the couple as absent parents more concerned with themselves than their son's mental health, and accused them of gross negligence for buying a 6-hour handgun as a present for Ethan 4 days before the shooting and then failing to secure it. Today, Craig Schilling, the father of Justin, said the families have been waiting for this moment.
I feel like there was some justice here today, for sure. The sentence was appropriate, and I'm glad that we received that.
Criminal defense attorney Joe Tamburino predicts this historic case will set a precedent for other parents.
If your child is expressing the same type of behavior, the same type of mental state attitude that Ethan Crumbley was expressing, you must do something about it.
And in handing down her sentencing today, the judge said she hopes her decision will act as a deterrent to prevent future school shootings. The Crumbleys will be eligible for parole in under 8 years. Nora?
Andres Gutierrez, thank you very much. Tonight, severe weather is causing havoc across the South. Strong winds knocked down trees in Shreveport, Louisiana. This one crashed into a house and flattened the owner's carport. And nearby, this 18-wheel FedEx truck flipped onto its side during downpours, causing major delays for the morning commute. For a look at the threats still to come, let's go to Dallas and meteorologist Alex Wilson with our partners at the Weather Channel. Good evening, Alex.
Good evening, Nora. It's already been a very active day of severe weather. That threat will continue, actually goes up into our Wednesday. So unfortunately, an even more dangerous day expected tomorrow. Let's start with what's happening right now. We have active watches across the South. Going to be a dangerous evening and overnight for parts of Texas and into Louisiana, where the tornado threat will remain. As we move through the overnight, in addition to these storms that'll bring the severe weather, the tornadoes, the hail, the gusty damaging winds, we'll also be watching for the threat of very heavy rain. So unfortunately, flash flooding and flooding will be a concern. Now, we start the morning tomorrow with storms ongoing. They'll continue through the afternoon. Take a look at the Torcon values as high as a 7. So that just means we could be seeing tornadoes that are stronger, those that are the EF2 or greater, and long track. Again, morning brings the severe weather. It continues all the way through the day. Even into the overnight, you can see those storms will be moving into parts of the southeast. Heavy rain potential means flash flooding likely all across the south. Some areas could see as much as 3 to 5+ inches of rain. Nora?
Alex Wilson, thank you very much. Tonight, an Idaho teenager is facing federal terrorism charges for an alleged plan to attack churches in the name of ISIS. The Justice Department says the 18-year-old was arrested on Saturday, just 1 day before launching a plot where he planned to use guns, knives, and flammable chemicals. CBS's Elise Preston reports the FBI was already on nationwide alert.
The FBI believes 18-year-old Alexander Mercurio was plotting deadly terror attacks on multiple Christian churches in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. According to court documents, Mercurio had pledged his allegiance to ISIS and his intention to die while killing others, using makeshift flamethrowers, a machete, and other weapons found in his home by the FBI, which says he communicated with other radicalized individuals on his school-issued computer.
The profile of this individual is not surprising. The large majority of them are male and typically are quite young. ISIS and its proxies do retain the ability and the intent to try to conduct an attack here in the homeland.
Today, this from FBI Director Christopher Wray.
The potential for a coordinated attack here in the homeland is now increasingly concerning.
It's a concern worldwide. ISIS-K claimed responsibility for this attack at a Russian concert hall last month. At least 144 were killed. Here at home, a just-released intelligence bulletin warns of a potential threat of violence targeting mass gatherings, such as sports stadiums, concert venues, or houses of worship.
It definitely sounds the alarm to the average American at home.
It is a fact that we're in a heightened threat environment. We as Americans need to live our lives, but we also need to do so while being incredibly vigilant.
There are at least 21 known extremist groups operating in Idaho, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. Court documents show the FBI was tracking Mercurio for nearly 2 years. He's expected in court tomorrow. Nora?
Wow, that's some good work by the FBI. At least Preston, thank you so much. Turning to the war in Gaza today, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared no force in the world will prevent Israeli forces from entering the besieged city of Rafah. It comes as Vice President Kamala Harris today met with families of several Americans taken hostage by Hamas, assuring them that the Biden administration is doing all it can to bring them home. CBS's Deborah Patta reports from Tel Aviv.
Rafah has become a tent city of mostly women and children who have been running from war for months. Once again, they fear the worst as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu doubles down on his plans to invade Rafah, despite the US warning that would be a mistake. Huria sought refuge here with her 9 children after her husband was killed in an Israeli airstrike. What hurts me the most, she said, is I've lost my dignity. I feel humiliated here. But after 6 months of war, if they are forced out, where do they go to next? The Israeli Defense Force has mostly withdrawn from southern Gaza, allowing residents to return to Khan Yunis. But this is not the home they remember. The destruction everywhere so complete, it is unlivable. Everything is dead, this woman said. Across this wasteland, there are also still more than 100 hostages, including Americans, being held, who have now spent more than half a year in captivity. Today, their family members met with Vice President Kamala Harris, once again pleading for their release.
What we have heard is that there is a deal on the table right now that all of the parties agree to and are willing to work with. We are waiting now, and the world waits for Hamas to get to yes.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said there is a serious offer on the table and that the ball is firmly in Hamas's court, while National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says he has spoken with Qatar's Prime Minister and urged him to get a response from Hamas as soon as possible. Nora?
Deborah Patta with that new reporting. Thank you very much. There are new developments tonight in last year's devastating train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. The railroad company, Norfolk Southern, has agreed to pay $600 million to settle a class action lawsuit related to the incident. CBS's Roxana Saberi reports some residents are still suffering from the impact of the toxic crash.
In the 14 months since the toxic train derailment forced nearly 2,000 people from their homes, Linda Murphy says she and her husband Russ have developed numbness and leg pain.
We really need long-term health care.
So you're worried about getting diagnosed with cancer years down the road?
Absolutely. Cancer, neurological diseases.
Murphy says the $600 million class action settlement won't be enough to cover future health care.
I almost feel like it's giving a grain of rice to the starting. Is it really going to help people the way that it should?
We appreciate and understand that anxiety. Jane Conroy, an attorney for the plaintiffs, acknowledges that with up to 100,000 people eligible for compensation, some might receive very little or choose to opt out. Still, she says the settlement is significant.
The derailment itself was totally avoidable, and just the pattern of conduct all resulted in a settlement of this size.
Norfolk Southern said in a statement today, the agreement does not include any admission of wrongdoing or fault, and that it's already committed over $100 million to the community.
If East Palestine becomes a cancer cluster, what would Norfolk Southern do?
From a long-term health standpoint, we are addressing that with the state and local authorities.
So is it an option that's on the table?
It is an option that is on the table, that is correct.
Plaintiffs' attorneys tell CBS News that if the settlement announced today is approved by a judge later this month, the first payouts could be made by the end of this year. Norfolk Southern still faces several other lawsuits. Nora?
Roxana Saberi, thank you very much. A helicopter with 2 people on board plunges into a pond. We have the details on their rescue next. Federal officials are investigating the cause of a helicopter crash today in Rhode Island. The chopper with 2 people on board went down in a pond and then sank. A man who happened to be fishing helped them out of the water. The pilot was treated at the scene, and a female passenger was taken to the hospital for evaluation. A group of Jewish and Arab women in Michigan find peace through dialogue in hopes of bringing people together. That's next. 6 months after the October 7th attack, life has forever changed in both Israel and Gaza. Back here at home, a group of women with strong connections to both places are working to find common ground. CBS's Lisa Ling traveled to Michigan to meet this special sisterhood.
These women, 6 Jewish and 6 Palestinian, have been meeting twice a month for over 20 years. They call themselves Zaytuna, the Arabic word for olive tree. Their motto, refusing to be enemies.
Every woman in the group here, I feel, is like a sister. I don't even see Jewish or Palestinian anymore. I just see human beings.
The safety of this environment has allowed these women to remain committed to each other in the face of October 7th and after.
You absorbed my pain as I absorbed your pain. It's important to just have a space, a place where everybody is there with open arms.
Have you all talked about ways in which you think that we could get to a better place?
There's room in a humanitarian way to recognize the trauma of the other. And people have lost that ability right now.
a message these women are spreading far beyond this room, including on college campuses, many of which have become deeply polarized. At the University of Michigan, 2 students, one Jewish and one Palestinian, started the Arab-Jewish Alliance more than a year ago to foster better relations between cultures.
I grew up Jewish, and the only time when I ever met Arab students was in my Arabic class. I was like, how can we bring Arab students and Jewish students together? And this kind of set us down this path.
I think like the week after October 7th, I was looking on like Twitter and I saw the rhetoric, the dehumanizing rhetoric, and so I thought I want to like find a club where I can actually interact with people on the other side, because I hadn't had a chance to interact with people.
You are the future.
For the Zaytunas, these young students embody the mission they've spent decades building.
I think that when you meet a group like Zaytuna who's been around for so many years, I think it reassures you that these friendships can last forever.
As a Holocaust survivor, this is what I learned. All human beings are the same. And if we could only realize that, then I think we could build a better world.
The power of conversation to inspire meaningful change. Lisa Ling, CBS News, Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Very important lesson, finding common ground and treating people with humanity. Heart of America is next with a special dog taking on an important job to help those in need.
This portion of the CBS Evening News is sponsored by Breasttree. Visit us at breasttree.com.
Finally, tonight's Heart of America, Meet the Guide Dogs, or Guiding Eyes for the Blind. This New York-based nonprofit has been providing trained guide dogs to those with vision loss, and they do it free of charge. Thanks to the work of over 1,000 volunteers, Guiding Eyes is able to provide 150 dogs a year to those in need. We sat down with President and CEO Thomas Panic and his own guide dog, 10, who was handed off to him from fellow board member and former Giants quarterback Eli Manning.
Blindness isn't easy to deal with. Finding my shoes in the morning is tough. I can't see the stars at night. Couldn't see the eclipse last night. But I do have this wonderful dog by my side that helps me, and I want to provide that to anyone who's going through the same thing that I've been through.
The Guiding Eyes for the Blind. They are tonight's Heart of America. And that is tonight's CBS Evening News. I'm Nora O'Donnell. Good night.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Goodman. Have a good life.